What is going on, everyone? This is NinjaGeek here, and today I want to discuss overtime within Overwatch, a mechanic that I really am not too fond of. Others of you may be really fond of the overtime mechanic. I don't really know because not a lot of the community has really spoken a lot about overtime, but I feel like I wanted to discuss it here as a discussion video, sort of. What do you prefer? How would you like to change overtime or keep it the same in Overwatch? And you can let me know in a comment down below. But what I really want to discuss is the actual mechanic of overtime. So I would like to mention the overtime mechanic in Overwatch as being broken at first, because most of the times, in my experience, at least anyways, with the game and going into overtime, it either puts me on the, when I'm on the point, it looks like I'm in overtime still, but then it just doesn't count and we get a loss of defeat because we're not in overtime when I was in fact standing on it. Sometimes we've had teammates that were actually on it, other teammates that were standing right on the point, the capture, payload, whatever, and overtime just did not work. So I feel like the game processes it as, obviously we're not on it during that little overtime period, but when we look at it, it's not graphically present and it looks like we're still on the point. It's not lenient at all in that sense, to the fact of the matter that you could literally be a little tiny pixel off of the point and you won't have overtime, and it's very fluky because, like I just mentioned, most of the times I would look like I'm standing on it. So one time we actually had a Roadhog that was right on the point, like literally, and he's a huge character, obviously, and it just did not count as overtime. And that's why I feel like I wanted to bring up these changes to overtime. So first of all, when the game first came out, or should I say, I guess in its beta stage, and then of course upon release, overtime worked pretty much evenly. So if I was on a payload or a capture point or wherever the point may be, whatever it happens to be, and it was on overtime, the overtime bar would go down the same exact way a minute from now than it did a minute ago. But then they changed it, a long time ago actually, they changed it to make it so that overtime now has a factor where if you're off of it, or like let's say you're on it for like 2 minutes straight and then you hop off of it, it goes down really quickly, versus it going down at a slower rate, like the regular pace of where it used to be. Now it has a time limit, so if you're in overtime for like 2 minutes straight and you hop off of it, it's going to go down instantly. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that mechanic, and the reason is just because it's so unpredictable that you're really not keeping track of time of how long you're on the payload. Now sure, granted, if you're on this thing for 2 minutes, you know that you really have to stay on it and keep it in overtime, but the overtime mechanic in general, I'm just not a huge fan of, and I would like to bring up some fixes here personally myself of what could be done. There's actually 2 fixes that I would like to address, and maybe there are other ones that you can leave, like I said, in a comment below if I don't mention something that you would like to be fixed, or maybe you just like it how it is. Me personally, like I said, I don't. But the first change that I would say to do to overtime, and I don't think they're going to do this one because it's a really drastic change, but I would say just completely eliminate it, because while it could be frustrating, like your Genji is on the point, let's say he swift striked over there and he makes it on the point. Yeah, okay, and it doesn't go into overtime. Let's say there was no overtime mechanic in the game. Oh, we lost because there's no overtime mechanic. But then again, if you went into overtime and Genji was the only one on it, would you have really gotten the overtime push anyways? Not really. And overtime in general is just really unfair, I think, because sometimes, depending on where the positioning is, I actually had an enemy team, we were holding them off. I think it was on Route 66. I don't exactly know what gameplay I'm going to use for this video, but it was on Route 66, and we were holding them off the entire time during that little round of the checkpoint thing. And at the last minute, literally not even, like in the last 10 seconds and going into overtime, they pushed the payload from the start of that to the next checkpoint. And it was frustrating, and this was just a regular quick play game, by the way, but it was frustrating because we held it off for so long, and then after they figured out a way to kill our defenses and finally managed to get in, they won just because overtime allowed them to stay on the point the entire time from the start of the checkpoint to the end of the checkpoint. And I just don't really feel like that's appropriate when we were holding off the entire time, and just because one or two people got down from just, luck and random whatever happening, they pushed the payload all the way to the end just because of the overtime mechanic. And I don't know if I would like to completely see it be removed, but I do feel like that is a solution. However, a better one I would like to suggest is to make it so that overtime does not have that little decrease in time. So let's say you're on it for between the next minute, and then in the next minute if you get off of it, it goes down faster. I'd say get rid of that, but make it so overtime only lasts for 30 seconds. So it's a straight 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds to push this payload, to capture this point, to control whatever objective it is. You have 30 seconds from the time that overtime starts until it ends to capture whatever you need to capture, and if you don't, then you lose. If you do, then you get on with it. And I think that this would be better, not only for the fact that it would be much easier to control because you literally have to do something within 30 seconds, right? But now you're talking about drastically decreasing the game times, because sometimes a game could go into overtime for literally 5 minutes, and it's just not fun to play a game like that in overtime when you're really trying so hard, and sometimes you either win or sometimes you lose, depending on what team you are and so on. But I think that if they made it so that overtime was how it was at the beginning of the game cycle, but made it so it's 30 seconds long, and you only have 30 seconds within overtime to be able to capture whatever point, like I keep saying. And if you don't, then you fail. If you do, then you win. Instead of having it be like this overtime 5-minute clash up on the payload when you're trying to hold them back, and it's like a 5-minute overtime game, and then it extends even further when they capture the point. I think it's like giving the attacking team the attacking team too much of it's like they're giving them too much leeway to capture this point or objective. And that's what I feel like needs to happen to overtime within Overwatch. I don't think that they are going to do the first option that I said, like completely remove overtime. I think that is a mechanic that is going to stay, because obviously they added it in, and it could be potentially easy to remove, but I don't think that would happen. I just was suggesting it. But the second option that I mentioned, I think could really make the game better. Now, I'm just coming from a standpoint of the community and looking at the game. Maybe they test this theory out or have tested other theories of how overtime could work in the past, and it just, maybe this theory just did not work in their testing, and they said, okay, we'll just try and do it to the best of their ability, and maybe this is the best version of overtime that we have. But right now, where it stands, I think that overtime gives the attacking team too much leeway and too much to go forth leniency wise onto whatever objective they're trying to capture, and I just don't think that it's really fair to a defending team, especially since on defense, like for example, take Numbani, right? You're trying to capture the point on the A flag, on the A defense point. The attacking team is trying to capture, and let's say they wipe 3 of your teammates. The teammates now have to run, unless they have, of course, a Symmetra teleporter, but they would have to basically walk all the way from spawn to point A, and that's a pretty far walk. I mean, there's other maps. I mean, Route 66 is another example. That one's a pretty far walk from the spawn to where the enemies actually are. And by the time you get your whole team together and group up again, they either are really close to the checkpoint, they captured it, and you have to push back at this point. And not saying that that's anything to do with anything wrong with that. It's just overtime makes it so much easier for an attacking team to actually win, and you have to have a really, really strong defense team to actually pull out wins. And with offense, I feel like I just win more of the times than not. Now, I don't have, of course, specific stats as to whether people win more in defense or offense. I don't have any of that. Blizzard does. The Overwatch team does. So maybe it is even. out there. Maybe the stats comparing defense and offense winning ratings are even to each other. I don't have that information, but from what I could tell from a community standpoint and from what my opinions are, again, subjective opinions, I don't think that overtime is right the way that it is right now within the game, and I would like to see it be changed in sometime in the future. Now, maybe not necessarily soon, because of course I would love to see Roadhog's hook get fixed. Of course, Roadhog's hook and other stuff along the way, but hopefully sometime, maybe mid 2017 or something, maybe they could start looking into overtime a little bit more. But overall, generally, I think that this isn't a mechanic that is completely broken out of the way, like Roadhog's hook, we know is broken. Okay, that's a broken mechanic. Overtime is not a broken mechanic. I just don't really feel that it's that good of it's that effective in its current use of the game right now. So anyways, you could leave your comments down below on all of this information on what you think needs to be changed about overtime, if there needs to be a change at all. I will definitely see you on the next one. This is NinjaGeek. I'm out, and peace.